sometimes people get hung up on the word jingle.
Okay.
Because what we're really talking about is a musical identity. And whether that's, you said a 60-second hit song earlier, that's really more accurate. And whether it's a 15 or 30, it's just a musical identification or a musical logo. In this digital environment where you have so many mediums and ways to get your marketing message out there, no matter what you call it, we're talking about creative music for your brand.
Music is such a powerful tool when it comes to branding, but what makes one track a hit and another a miss? Today on the Marketing Minute, I continue my conversation with Scott Ross as we dive deeper into the creative process of original score and jingle production, and what makes music unique when it comes to communications.
Well, I think when you read a slogan, you're leaving it up to the potential customer to read that and really have it sink into their psyche to stick with them. If they hear it spoken by a DJ on a radio station, again, there's only a certain amount of saturation that's going to have at the end of the day with the customer. Or the same DJ doing 5 spots back to back to back to back, and it's kind of running into one segment.
That never happens.
But so when you set it to music, in a perfect world, again, you marry that slogan or that phone number or the name of the company with the right melody and the right hook. You've automatically combined a number of senses and basically served it up on a plate to the customer in the format that you want to present your company or product in. And again, in a memorable way that is more likely to stick with them, not only throughout the day, but for an extended period of time. And, you and I have talked about in the past jingles that you can still recall from your childhood.
Absolutely.
I remember when I was a kid, we were riding the school bus home. We broke into Plop, Plop, Fizz, Fizz, Oh, What a Relief It Is, and sang it the whole way home. The bus driver actually pulled over the bus and got mad at us. And I thought, well, now I look back and think, wow, somebody was a genius.
Right. It's just the power of music. I mean, think about the Big Mac jingle.
Right. And it's not only national, because if you do a Google search for most memorable jingles, the amount of examples that come up, it's overwhelming. You'd be amazed how many are embedded in our brains. Mm-hmm. But locally, Cleveland.com recently did a piece in January, and they listed the best Northeast Ohio jingles. If you grew up in Northeast Ohio, you remember these jingles. IX Indoor Amusement Park, Discount Drug Mart.
Lawson's.
Yeah, absolutely.
The Big O.
The old We Want Schwabels jingle. Every time Jim Brickman comes in concert to Northeast Ohio, he'll stop, and he's a great storyteller, and he started out as a composer and jingle writer in Northeast Ohio, and he'll tell the story of the Schwabels jingle, and he'll play it for the crowd, and they start laughing. It's a feel-good moment, mm-hmm. and that ultimately you want that for your jingle experience.
Did he write the every 19 minutes the place goes crazy as well for Northfield Park?
Now, yeah, you know what? Now that you say that, I do remember him playing that in concert one time. Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Every 19 minutes the place goes crazy.
Right.
I mean, we all remember it.
But Scott, let's shift gears a little bit and talk about music in other media. Broadcast obviously isn't the only media available today, so let's talk about the value of a musical identifier or a logo to be used across all media versus, say, stock music.
Well, I think there are some situations where it obviously might make sense to go that route, as long as they realize the limitations they're going to have with that library track. I know you and I have worked on several jingles where the client came to us and said, hey, we were really happy with this piece of library music until we found out it was being used for a foot odor powder commercial over in Indianapolis, and people are starting to confuse the two products or whatever the case is. So you always run that risk of, multiple companies using that piece and your message kind of getting jumbled.
Blurred with theirs,
right,
yeah.
Right. And ultimately a customer will be conflicted when they hear that piece. They're not going to identify it with you. They're going to identify it with a bunch of different companies. Secondly, if they do decide to put lyrics and vocals to it, you're really confined to what that piece of music has to offer. So, You might want the phone number in there. You might want your slogan in there and the name of the company, and it might not fit real well, but you're going to force it in there anyway. So you run into the square peg in a round hole problem. And ultimately, I think that's what you and I bring to the table with talent and the experience is we're able to take a lot of different factors and marry them together into one unified artistic vision that makes sense for the customer.
So now that we have, I mean, when we started doing, jingles, you and I started doing jingles together, it was basically radio and television. It was the medium available to almost every client,
right.
and internal videos and things like that.
Right.
Now we've got YouTube channel, we've got Snapchat, we've got Facebook, we've got,
Yep.
How important is that branding of the customer with a musical signature in today's media environment?
Well, I think that's a great point because if you're going to spend that much money on a cohesive artistic vision, you want to make sure you're utilizing that in every facet that you have. And as you just said, they have more tools at their disposal than ever, which again works in favor of a jingle because, and this is where your expertise comes in, I hand you a 60-second jingle, and a lot of times you're carving that into a 30, a 10, a 5, and probably in the near future it'll be a 2-second hit, which they can then put on their Facebook page and everywhere else on their YouTube channel, as they should.
Right.
Another interesting fact is how much talent is here in Northeast Ohio. You and I battled in the beginning. Well, if we want a jingle, we have to go to Nashville, we have to go to New York, we have to go to LA. And we've proven over time that no matter what style of music or which vocalist or what direction you're going, we can put together a product that as the hit single fades out on the radio station and the jingle comes in, they're not going to see a drop in quality. They're not going to see any indication that that's a, quote, local jingle.
Right.
And I think that's probably some of the progress that we're most proud of in the last 20 years. And I think people would be surprised if they knew some of the players that have actually performed on the jingles we've created, guys that are known worldwide, and yet we all work together, and musicians would be very familiar with to know that Neil Zaza and Freddie DeMarco and some of those guys come in when we need them, and they're more than happy to work with us because we have a great system going, and it's a lot of fun.
Well, yeah, and the advantage of having, the pros available is we can lean on them when we need that specific sound.
Right.
Because no one person can create, every genre, every style, every instrument that we need. And
exactly,
it's why we have the vocal talent that we do, and the instrumentalists that we have as well.
Right. That didn't stop me from trying back in the early 90s to prove to you that I could do any genre and all the instruments, but eventually, the young buck learned. He had to expand the talent network and bring the pros in when necessary.
I think when you recognize your limitations on and not you, but anybody,
right.
When you recognize your limitations, then you appreciate the talent that you can bring in, and I think the talent appreciates being brought in.
Yes,
and I think everybody does a better job when all of that works together. I mean, it really is. This whole process is a very collaborative process, and everybody. I use the phrase occasionally that in the studio we create the environment that allows for the freedom to create and the power to inspire. And,
right.
and that's really the feeling that we like, and we work best when clients
right.
allow that whole process to gel. It may not be pretty at times, but boy, it gets the job done right.
And an important point that makes me think of is the only way you get to that point of creative freedom is if you've done the work on the front end to listen to the client and gather a lot of valuable information so that the end product that they need.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you were discussing all that, that process only works if you've really tuned in to what they're saying and what their mission is and what their vision is. And like you said, they trust you to go through that messy process to come out on the other end with something really cool.
Right.
But you definitely have to listen to the client and their needs and what they want.
By the way, when I interviewed Molly, and she appears on a couple of earlier podcasts, one of her most favorite jingles that we've ever created was the traffic jam.
They have been a lot of fun to work with, and there have been many memorable spots.
Yeah, you couldn't do any other voice work after you did Traffic Jam.
Absolutely. Hopefully, National Jingle Day and this podcast will inspire more companies to take a chance on it.
You sure it's just national? I thought it was International Jingle Day.
International
Jingle. We'll make it International Jingle Day. Thanks again for joining us on this episode of the Marketing Minute. And be sure to check out the podcast extras when you visit hearaudioconcepts.com/podcasts.